Hi, this is Alex from phpacademy.org, back with another PHP tutorial for the new Boston. Now in this video we're going to be talking about MD5 encryption, or rather generating an MD5 hash from a string. Now if you don't know what MD5 is, I'll take a couple of seconds to just explain. MD5 is a form of encryption, and a hash is generated from a string that's given. And in PHP we have a function called MD5, and what this does is if you supply a string in here, it will convert this string to an MD5 hash. So let's take a look at a couple of examples. Let's create a string that might possibly be a password. So I'm going to give this a value of password. So our password essentially is password. Now if we wanted to encrypt this, we could simply echo out or create a new variable, say string hash, and I'm going to make this equal to MD5, and then in the bracket I'm going to supply the string data that I want to convert, or rather encrypt. Now I'm just going to come down here and echo out string hash. Okay, so now let's take a look at password, what it looks like with an when it's been hashed. Pass error in line 8, okay. Oh yeah, sorry, semicolon on the end of there. So let's refresh. Okay, so what you see now is the hash representation of the string password. Now, however much we refresh this, it's going to stay exactly the same. So let's keep refreshing, it's exactly the same. So we call this one-way encryption. This string, this hash, cannot be decrypted back to normal text. The only way we can do this is take an input and match it to the actual hashed version of the input. So for example, if you had a password stored in a database with this value, which we are going to come on to talk about in a minute and give a short example, if you had a password stored as a hash and the user typed in, say, Alex as the password, the hash for Alex wouldn't match the hash for this. Therefore, the password would be incorrect. Now, if we were to hash password again, if password was entered via user input and we hashed password again, it would match this. Therefore, we would assume, well, we'd know that the password is the same. So if this doesn't make sense, I'm going to create a new file and I'm going to copy and paste this hash over into this file. Let's paste it in there. And we're going to call this hash.txt. So obviously this would be an unsecure way of storing a password because someone would be able to access it. However, what I'm going to do now is from index.php is I'm going to let the user enter a value. So we're going to create a form that allows a user to enter a value. Then when the form is submitted, we're going to open hash.txt, we're going to look at the contents, and we're going to see if the password matches. Bear in mind this is equal to password. So if we were to type in Alex, the password would be incorrect. However, if we were to type in password, this would be correct. So let's begin creating, well, we'll get rid of this first of all, and let's begin creating our form. So form action equals index.php. The method is going to be post. Remember, we're posting a password, so we want to keep it out of sight. So we're going to use post. And when you're sort of using login forms or register forms, you should always use the post method as well, because we've got a lot of data to process, as well as we wanted it to look as clean as possible. So now I'm going to create a label called password, or some text called password, and the input type would usually be password, but for the purposes of this tutorial I'm going to use text, just so we can see the text that we're typing in. And the name of this is going to be user underscore password. Okay, so let's break down a couple of lines and create a submit button, and the value of this is going to be submit. So let's just refresh the page and check that looks okay. Okay, so we've got the option to type in the password here. You can see what I'm typing, whereas if we were to use the password type, which you'd obviously always use for passwords, then we wouldn't be able to see the data. So let me just change this back to text. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is up here we want to check that a password has been entered into the box and the form itself has been submitted. So we do this, we start an if statement, and this here is going to be the block that runs if this is evaluated to true. So the first thing we need to check is if the input type has been set, therefore the form has been submitted. So we can say is set post user underscore password, and we're also going to check if the password isn't blank. So we're going to say is not empty, not a semicolon there, sorry, and then we're going to specify this post again. So user password. Okay, so presuming that the form has been set and the password has been entered, we're now going to echo out something just to confirm this to us as programmers before we continue to the next step. So let me type, let me just refresh the page first of all. Let me just type password in here. And I'm going to click submit. And you can see that we've got this little message, confirmation message coming back. However, if I submit it without any data in, nothing happens. So the user is going to have to type in a password. We could also, let's say, else here. We could echo, please enter a password. Okay. So obviously we're not going to be echoing out okay to the user. That was just for our benefit. Now the next stage is to set a new variable with this password value in. It's not necessary, but it just allows us to program a lot quicker. So we're going to say user underscore password. You can name this variable anything you like, and that is going to equal $_post and then user password. So we're just creating a shorthand way to reference this posted variable. If we reference this outside of this if statement, we may come across an undefined index error. So we reference this inside here. Okay, so the next thing to do is to open up this file called hash.txt, and we want to grab this value here and then compare it to the password that's entered. Now we're obviously not directly comparing it, because if we were directly comparing it, the user would have to type this password hash in. Or if we were storing it as plain text, we wouldn't have to do anything to it, because that would avoid the point of talking about MD5 hashes.